Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty cool today. It might sound a bit technical at first, but trust me, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
We stumbled across this research article. It's called Discovery and Structural Characterization of a Thermostable Bacterial Monoamine Oxidase. Catchy,
Too
right?
much so, yeah.
It's in the EVS journal, and it's all about this new enzyme, MAOTb, and we just had to share it with you.
It really is a fascinating enzyme.
So today we're going to break down exactly what MAOTb does, why it's so unique, and why scientists think it has so much potential. But before we get into all that, can you give us a little, enzyme 101? Like, what exactly are these things?
Okay, so think of it this way. Our cells are like these super busy cities. And in these cities, you have these really important workers called biogenic amines. They're involved in, well, pretty much everything. Communication between cells, energy production, you name it.
Okay, so like little messengers zipping around.
Exactly. But just like in a real city, too much of anything can be a problem. If these biogenic amines start building up, they can actually become toxic.
Yeah.
And that's where enzymes come in. Enzymes like MAOTd, they're kind of like the city's waste management system. They break down these amines and keep everything running smoothly.
Gotcha. So MAOTb is like part of the cleanup crew.
Yeah.
But what makes this particular enzyme so special?
So there are a couple of things that make it stand out. First, it's incredibly efficient at breaking down certain types of amines, especially those with longer chains.
Like a specialized recycling center, maybe?
Exactly. And then there's the fact that it comes from a bacterium that lives in seriously hot environments. We're talking above 73 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's like way too hot for a human.
Right. So this bacterium is what we call thermophilic, and that means the enzymes it produces are thermostable. They can withstand those high temperatures without falling apart.
I see. So this little enzyme is kind of a tough guy, and why is that important? The whole thermostable thing?
Oh, that's huge for industrial applications. Lots of processes use heat, and having an enzyme that can handle that heat opens up a lot of possibilities.
Okay, starting to see why you're so excited about this. So we've got an enzyme that's efficient, heat resistant. What else? What else makes this MAOTb so special?
Well, it actually has a structure very similar to the MAO enzymes found in humans. In fact, it even forms a dimer, like human MAOB.
A dimer, sorry, back up for a sec. What's that?
So a dimer is basically two MAOTb molecules that come together to form a functional unit. They work together like a team.
Interesting. So two tiny robots joining forces.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
Yep.
And this dimer structure, along with other features like its flavin cofactor and aromatic cage, are really important for how it interacts with and breaks down those amines. Researchers were even able to get a really detailed 3D picture of the enzyme using X-ray crystallography.
Oh, wow. So they gotta, see it in action.
Pretty much. And this revealed, besides confirming some similarities to human MAOs, some interesting differences too. For example, it lacks the C-terminal membrane binding helix.
Can you translate that for us non-scientists?
Sure. Basically, it means that unlike human MAOs, which are attached to membranes inside the cell, this one is soluble. It can float around freely in a solution.
Oh, okay. And why is that a big deal?
It makes it way easier to work with in the lab,
Wow.
for producing it, purifying it, and studying it. And that's super helpful for developing new biotech applications.
Okay, this is getting good. So efficient, heat-loving, soluble. Anything else?
Oh yeah, there's more. So it also have a wider active site compared to human MAOs.
Okay, so the active site, that's where, the action happens, right? Where it grabs onto the amine and breaks it down.
You got it. And this wider active site probably explains why it's so good at breaking down those longer amines we talked about before. It has more room to work with.
I see. So it's like MAOTb has a bigger mouth to chomp down on those larger amines.
That's a great way to put it. And this difference, along with some unique aspects of its surface charge, suggests that it might interact with other molecules in ways that human MAOs don't.
Fascinating. Okay, so we're getting a real sense of just how unique MAOTb is. But for our listeners who might not be, biochemistry experts, why should we care about all these little structural details? What makes this exciting for the average person?
That's a great question. The beauty of these discoveries is that they open up so many possibilities. With all its unique features, MAOTb has potential in so many different areas.
Like what?
Well, for one, its thermostability and the fact that it's easy to produce make it ideal for industrial biotechnology. Processes that require high temperatures, like producing biofuels or breaking down pollutants, could really benefit from MAOTb.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then there's its ability to break down those long-chain amines. This could be huge for things like food preservation, even wastewater treatment. Imagine less smelly fish, or more efficient ways to get rid of harmful compounds in sewage.
Okay, now that's something we can all appreciate.
Right. But we also mentioned pharmaceuticals, and that's where things get really interesting.
Oh yeah, how does MAOTb fit into that?
Well, remember how I said MAOTb is structurally similar to human MAOs? This means it could be used as a model system to study how those human MAOs work.
Sort of like a stand-in, but easier to work with?
Exactly. And if we can understand how MAOTb functions, that could lead to new drugs that target human MAOs more effectively.
And that could lead to new treatments for all sorts of conditions.
Precisely. Conditions like depression, Parkinson's disease, even some cancers. MAOTb could be a key to new therapeutic approaches.
This is incredible. A tiny enzyme with such huge potential.
It is, and it gets even more interesting.
Ooh, a plot twist.
So the bacterium that produces MAOTb, it actually lives in an environment without oxygen. It's what we call an anaerobic bacterium.
Wait, hold on. No oxygen. But doesn't MAOTb need oxygen to do its job? I thought you said MAOs use oxygen to break down amines.
You're absolutely right. And that's what makes this so fascinating. It's a real puzzle. Why would an enzyme that loves oxygen be found in a bacterium that lives without it?
It's like finding a fish that loves to breathe air.
Haha, exactly. It just doesn't quite add up. Scientists are speculating that maybe MAOTb can use other molecules as electron acceptors in its natural environment.
Electron acceptors. Okay, can you explain that without getting too technical?
Okay, so think of it like this. When MAOTb breaks down an amine, it needs to get rid of some electrons. Oxygen is usually the molecule that accepts those electrons.
So oxygen is like the electron trash can.
Perfect analogy.
Ah.
But in an environment without oxygen, MAOTb needs to find another trash can for those electrons.
Makes sense. So what are some of the other options?
It could be things like nitrates or sulfates. They're common in those oxygen-free environments. They can also accept electrons, although it might not be as efficient as using oxygen.
So MAOTb is a little bit resourceful, finding a way to get the job done even when its favorite tool isn't available.
Exactly. It really speaks to how adaptable life can be, especially in those extreme environments.
It makes you wonder what other secrets this little enzyme might be hiding.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Researchers are just starting to scratch the surface. There are so many questions left to answer, like how does MAOTb switch between using oxygen and these other electron acceptors? What triggers that switch? And what does all of this mean for how it functions in the bacterium?
It sounds like this research is just the beginning of the MAOTb story.
It really is. It's a reminder that even the tiniest organisms can have amazing secrets just waiting to be discovered.
It's a real mystery. How does MAOTb pull off this oxygen trick? I mean, it seems to thrive in a place with no oxygen, but then it prefers oxygen to do its job.
Well, one idea is that MAOTb might be what we call a facultative anaerobe.
Facultative anaerobe. Okay, another term to add to the list. Break that down for us. What does that even mean?
Basically, it means that MAOTb can switch between different ways of working depending on whether oxygen is available or not. So like if there's oxygen around, great, it'll use that. But if oxygen is scarce, it can use other molecules instead.
So it's like it has a backup plan, a way to keep going even when its preferred fuel source is gone.
Exactly. It's a great example of how adaptable life can be, especially in those tough environments.
So what kind of molecules are we talking about here? What could MAOTb use instead of oxygen?
Things like nitrates or sulfates, which are pretty common in oxygen-free environments. They can also accept electrons, although it might not be as efficient.
So it's like making do with what you've got. But I'm guessing this compromise comes at a price, right?
Yeah, there could be some trade-offs, like maybe MAOTb works a bit slower or produces slightly different byproducts when it uses these alternative electron acceptors. But the important thing is that it can still function, which is pretty remarkable.
Makes you wonder what else this enzyme might be capable of.
Oh, for sure. We're really just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to learn. Like, how does it actually switch between using oxygen and these other molecules? Is there a signal that triggers the change? And what does this all mean for how MAOTb works within the bacterium itself?
It sounds like we've got a whole new chapter opening up in our understanding of enzymes and just how adaptable they can be.
Absolutely. And a great reminder that even these tiny organisms can hold incredible secrets, just waiting for us to discover them.
Well, speaking of discoveries, I think it's time for us to move on to the next one. You know, it's wild to think that this teeny tiny enzyme just doing its thing in this crazy hot environment could help us solve some of our biggest problems.
Yeah, it really shows you how connected everything is, right? Like
Yeah.
the answers we need might be hiding in the weirdest places like a boiling hot spring or, even inside a termite.
Totally. And it makes you realize just how important basic research is. You never know what's going to lead to the next big discovery. So we got to keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep pushing the boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Got to stay curious, right? We got to keep that drive to figure out the world around us, even the stuff we can't even see.
Exactly, because who knows what's out there waiting to be found, right? Maybe the next big enzyme discovery will like revolutionize medicine or help us clean up the planet or even, give us new ways to make energy.
Totally. The possibilities are endless if we just stay open-minded and keep that sense of wonder.
Well said. Okay, well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
It's been fun exploring this amazing little enzyme with you all.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of MAOTb. We hope you learned something new, and remember, even though this deep dive is over, the exploring never really stops. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the amazing world of science. Who knows what you might discover?